Across the sands of Libya, a shadow the world tried to erase is rising again. More than a decade after NATO's bombs fell and Western newspapers celebrated, a familiar figure steps quietly back into the light. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, older now, quieter, but completely unbroken. For years, Western capitals insisted Libya had been liberated. They said the fall of Gaddafi would bring freedom. But today, the truth stands in long queues for fuel in a nation built on oil. It echoes in hospitals that go dark, in cities controlled not by leaders but by militias, each waving a different flag. A country once stable, wealthy, and united has become a battlefield of interests, and in that chaos, a name forbidden for more than a decade begins to rise again: Gaddafi. This isn't the return of a rumor. It's the return of a legacy. A legacy built on sovereignty, oil wealth, and a fierce refusal to bow to foreign powers. And as Saif al-Islam reemerges, you can feel the nervousness in Washington, Paris, and London, because they understand something many still refuse to admit. If Saif takes back control of Libya, its tribes, its oil fields, its political story, the map of North Africa will change, and the old order will crack. Tonight, we follow the moves they don't want you to notice. The alliances formed quietly in desert tents. The messages sent to tribes that once shaped Libya's destiny. The silent plan to rebuild a nation piece by piece. To some, this is politics. But to many Libyans, this is payback. After Gaddafi's fall, the world expected his memory to disappear like smoke over the desert. They believed his sun would vanish, and the green era would never return. But the ghosts they buried never rested. Across Libya, whispers grew, whispers of free education, working hospitals, functioning institutions, and salaries that arrived on time. Whispers of a country that, despite its flaws, belonged to its people. Young Libyans who never lived under Gaddafi now ask their parents, was life really better then? And the answer is almost always the same. At least we had a country. That is the first revenge memory. Because the more Libya collapsed into warlord rule, the stronger the memory of stability began to grow. Each blackout, each fuel shortage, each militia checkpoint turned nostalgia into rebellion. So when a single image appeared online, a photo of Saif al-Islam alive, it spread like wildfire. To some, it was hope. To others, a warning. But to Western governments, it was a nightmare. Diplomats began asking the question they feared for years. What if he actually returns? Because they know one truth history has proved over and over. You can kill a man, but you cannot kill an idea. And in Libya, that idea now has a face again. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi. The unfinished chapter of a story the world tried to close. A chapter now being written again in silence, in strategy, and in the determination of a nation tired of being carved into pieces. When Muammar Gaddafi ruled, Libya's oil didn't just flow, it belonged to Libyans. Every barrel funded schools, hospitals, electricity projects, and subsidies that made Libya one of the richest countries in Africa. But after 2011, that wealth was divided like merchandise at an auction. Foreign companies rushed in. Militias seized oil terminals. Politicians backed by outside powers signed deals that emptied Libya's treasury. Foreign governments called it stabilization. Libyans called it robbery. Now Saif al-Islam is quietly moving to reverse that order. He is reaching out to Libya's most powerful tribal leaders, especially in the oil crescent, where most of Libya's wealth still lies underground. These tribes remember when the government paid them directly, not through foreign intermediaries. For them, Saif's return is not about nostalgia. It's business, justice, and dignity. Reports from the region say Saif's envoys are drafting new agreements with local commanders to secure oil fields under Libyan hands again. No foreign middlemen. No Western overseers. A clean break from the post-2011 chaos. Behind these moves lies a philosophy his father repeated for decades. Our wealth must serve our people, not those who steal in our name. That philosophy terrifies the West. Because if Libya regains full control of its oil, other nations will follow. Niger, Mali, Chad, all currently rejecting French control, are watching closely. Saif's comeback isn't just political. It's economic rebellion. It's a warning to anyone who believes Africa must remain a supplier, never an owner. And as Libya's tribes begin to gather behind Saif's call for national control, Western media grows strangely silent. Because they know one uncomfortable truth. If Africa's most strategic oil nation slips from their influence, their entire regional strategy collapses with it. But this story isn't just about oil. It's about a dream revived across a continent. Gaddafi's vision was never limited to Libya. He dreamed of a united Africa. One currency, one military, one voice strong enough to challenge Western dominance. For that dream they called him dangerous. For that dream he was overthrown. But that dream is whispering back through his son. Saif does not give fiery speeches. He does not command television networks. His strength comes from presence, simple, symbolic, and unmistakable. He talks about sovereignty, African unity, and economic independence. And across the continent, that message is no longer uncommon. In Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, young military leaders are openly rejecting French control, expelling foreign troops, and reclaiming their nation's wealth. Each move echoes Gaddafi's old message: Africa must stand on its own. Somewhere in that awakening stands Saif al-Islam, a symbol not of rebellion but of unfinished history. If Libya joins this rising front, the entire balance of power in Africa will shift. Imagine a united line of nations stretching from the Sahel to the Mediterranean, backed by oil, gold, and a shared commitment to independence. For Western policymakers, that is not progress, it is their greatest fear. And that fear is already visible in quiet corridors of Washington, Paris, and Brussels. Officials whisper about a green return. Intelligence reports describe Saif building alliances with tribes, former officers, and businessmen who once shaped Libya's destiny. They label it a threat to stability, but what they really mean is a threat to Western control. Foreign media outlets are quietly told to keep Libya out of headlines. Show the chaos, they say, but never show the rebuilding. Cover the militias, but never the tribal meetings calling for unity. Highlight the failures, but never the possibility of a comeback. This silence is not accidental. It is fear. Because Libya's collapse justified everything, from NATO intervention to the spread of foreign bases across North Africa. But if Saif returns to power and proves Libya can rise without Western support, the narrative collapses. Why have peace talks failed for 12 years? Why do militias still receive funding? Why do elections always get delayed? Because instability is profitable. A strong, united, independent Libya is not. And so the same powers that once destroyed Gaddafi's Libya are moving again, this time in shadows, using economic pressure, political isolation, and media silence to prevent its rebirth. But this time, they're not facing a dictator, they're facing a belief reborn across Africa. The fear gripping Western capitals today has nothing to do with weapons. It is the fear of a continent waking up to its own power. A fear that an old flame once smothered may ignite an entire region. For Libya, the Arab Spring didn't bring flowers. It brought a long winter. But now, more than a decade later, the desert winds are shifting. The legacy they mocked, the dream they buried, the vision they tried to extinguish, it is all returning. Slowly, quietly, unshakably. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi stands at the edge of history, one step away from redemption, one misstep from ruin. If he succeeds, Libya could rise again as the heartbeat of a new Africa. An Africa that owns its wealth, shapes its destiny, and no longer bows to foreign interests. If he fails, Libya may fall back into the same chaos the world once cheered for. Either way, the story of Libya is not over. It is only turning its next page. What do you believe? Is this the rebirth of a nation or the return of a storm? Drop your thoughts below. Like the video, subscribe to Afro Culture Diary, and turn on the bell icon, because the next chapter of Africa's untold history is already unfolding, and you will see it here first.